Welcome to this week's episode of Team MBS Draft Central. We have Bill Carroll back in the house with us this week, along with Greg Rector and myself, Jeff Barnes. The Combine is in the books. A lot of talk and a lot of things have happened. With that being said, let's start right there with the Combine. Bill, you were on hand last week.
Yep.
We've seen everybody talk about how fast the group was. I heard from the oohs and ahs how fast the group was, hearing the fans being wowed away. Tell us how it was in the building last week.
Yeah, so some things that always stand out. First of all, shout out to anybody who gets through the Combine. It is a grueling experience just covering it, let alone participating. I always sleep very, very well the Sunday night after the Combine. A lot of running around, fair amount of going out. I only went out really twice, but I'm old, but I went out a couple of times. Shout out to Iaria's, my new favorite little Italian spot, not too far south of the stadium, which is my new favorite eatery there. And what's the other one? Capital Tap? Was it Capital Tap? Something Tap. But there was, those two places that went out. But things that I noticed, there was a lot of speed, as was mentioned there, particularly in the receivers and corners and safeties. A little less speed amongst the tight ends, obviously. A very, very fast group of offensive and defensive linemen. And the talk, obviously, was about the quarterbacks and the quote-unquote third quarterback. Can somebody fight their way into the first round? And on the podium and on the field, I think Jackson Dart helped himself. He's a tough guy. He's got a little bit of a, Mormon / like a Mormon version of Baker Mayfield, kind of like he's a little taller, but he's an athletic, tough kid. He wanted to play safety, and he did play safety in high school to the point they shut him down and said, we need you to just play quarterback. He likes running into people and over people, probably a little too much. He has a strong arm. He's a bit of a project, but frankly, all the quarterbacks in this class are a bit of a project, with Cameron Ward being the least of he's going to one that's going to work your quarterback and offensive coordinator, quarterback coach and offensive coordinator the least, probably to get him ready, but all of them will need some work. The weird thing to me, it almost seems like a coordinated effort, was to talk up Tyler Shuck. And while he has some good qualities, he's the tallest quarterback that was there. He's 6'4" and 7/8. This is a player that literally initially had beat out Justin Herbert. They're in the exact same recruiting class, and then lost the job to Herbert due to injury and never got it back, and then transferred and then transferred and then transferred, and finally finished up. But he has some qualities, but he doesn't look like a starter. He looks like a high value backup. Like, that's a ceiling to me. Sort of a Nick Folesian, level backup. And obviously, the other talk is about Shedeur and his demeanor. And I'm just going to be very honest. There's a racial element to it. I know that a white quarterback who did and said the exact same things would be described as supremely confident, as opposed to arrogant. But for whatever reason, there seems to be a certain amount of people being uneasy about a young black man having that level of self-assuredness. It just seems to bother or rub some people the wrong way. Did he keep mentioning the name of his own clothing brand constantly, the same way that some people say, go whatever? Yes, he kept dropping the name of his clothing brand. And he said he doesn't particularly care what critics think of him and other things. But we've heard lots of quarterbacks say lots of similar things about not hearing the noise, not paying attention to. I think it's a combination of things. I think the NIL thing has caused some people to look differently at college athletes, especially if they, he's not number one. Quinn Ewers, who was there but didn't run but did other on-field testing. That's the real first guy to break the $1 million mark. And, Shedeur is in the top 5, but he's not number one. Ewers is number one. Ewers broke through the $1 million barrier. And now, Carson Beck is at or near that same number. But there's some guys who are in the 7 figures before they ever step on an NFL field. I think that also bothers the people. And some people call that hateration. right? That's a term some people might use. Yeah, I think there's some player hater stuff going on regarding him because of the life he's led and where he's grown up. But this is a tough kid. Nobody got hit more at the quarterback position the last 2 years in the FBS. He's number one. Now, you don't want to win that contest, right? That's not, but he's number one. So when people wonder, oh, does he care about football? Well, the guy that got treated like a human pinata, yeah, clearly. I mean, this guy doesn't need money. You know what I mean? Like, the fact is that he's set for life if he never touched the ball in his life. So I think some of the stuff you hear people say about Shedeur is just not true. I think some of it has a kernel of truth, but has been overblown. The rest of the quarterbacks, some of the guys are just frankly unrealistic. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's guys who I don't think really accurately see who they are as prospects. Now, some of it's that, once again, that confidence thing. You know, when a guy says, I think I'm one of the top quarterbacks here, or I think I deserve to be in the first round, and you go back to the tape, it's like, oh, buddy. Oh, no. You know, like you need to at least solidify your mechanics first. Okay, a few other things on the quarterbacks. Obviously, the top guys come and just meet and greet. You know, so both Cam Ward and Shedeur did nothing on field at all, except Shedeur went down there and like cheered on his guys. And I did see Cameron like warming up the Miami receivers and stuff like that, but they didn't go through the whole process. And there was some talk about that, but every year the top guys don't do things. I love it when like a guy who's at the top, when like Myles Garrett or whatever comes and does everything, right? I love when the top guys do come and test and do all our, even some of the top offensive linemen. Now, I want to make it clear, while they may not have the same sort of, limelight around them that the top quarterbacks and top wide receivers and top running backs have. And yeah, the number one rated wide receiver, Teteroy, McMillan, came and did a little bit, but didn't do much. Genty just basically, came to, kiss babies and shake hands. But even the top offensive linemen, as long as once again, maybe it's a lineman mentality, but as long as they were good to go, tended to test. Will Campbell, I don't know who you think number one is, but Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks both did pretty much every single thing. And I got to talk to Will Campbell a little bit. And, he's exactly who you think he is. He's a kid from the 318, as he made clear. He grew up admiring, Whitworth, right? He wants to follow the Whitworth path to at least haul a very good career. Kid likes to hunt and fish, grew up on a farm. He's exactly who you think he is. And I think he's a top 10 prospect. I think Banks is right around that same range. If Simmons apparently, got all good news, he's a guy that's going to go in the top 15. Like, don't be surprised if a third of the players that go in the first half of the draft are either tackles or guys who could play guard and tackle, right? I think there's going to be a lot. Once again, we just saw what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl. I will not be surprised at all if there's way more offensive linemen going early than people might suspect. I thought that even going in. I feel even more strongly that that's going to be the case coming out. Some fairly serious character stuff came out on some of the players, and I don't know how deep we want to get into that, but I did have to make a significant adjustment downward of at least one player on my board because of something he himself, admitted to having done.
Well, let's get into that.
Okay.
Because that's an important thing, as well as the medicals. We're going to get into all of that. We don't have a guest tonight. It's just top fives and our combine recap. So we can go as long as we need to with the combine stuff.
Okay.
Stuff coming out of the combine and top fives coming right after that. We'll start with the receivers, take our break, and come back with the corners after that.
All right.
So,
yep. How about it, Bill?
Okay. So there's been a lot of buzz around two of the pass rushers. James Pierce had a great combine, but people said they didn't like him, right? Or some people said. Now, once again, it's the classic anonymous scout stuff. Here's what I can tell you from having talked to people who've coached him and played with him. He is not a quote-unquote people person. Everyone puts on their resume they're a people person. Well, James Pierce would not put that on his resume. He's just not a people person. He's not a guy that's going to run up to you and ask you how your mom's doing. He's not going to want to go out for you with drinks after practice. He's just not that guy. He's a terrific football player, particularly a terrific pass rusher, and he's growing as a run defender, I guess is a good way to put it. He plays the run on the way to the quarterback, as they say. But it's like with Charles Haley a little bit. I mean, not quite to that extent, maybe, but he's one of those guys that you better have the right room. You better have the right staff if you bring Pierce to your. And once again, I didn't adjust. I mean, he's exactly where he was before. I knew he'd be an actual testing freak, and I knew that not everybody would like him. He's just a kind of odd duck, for lack of way of putting it. He's not a guy that throws his arms around other guys and says, "Hey guys, how's everybody doing?" That's just not him. And he's going to have run-ins with the press probably during work, especially if he ends up in one of those more pugnacious, markets. It would not be great for him. But he's such a good football player. They're not going to let him get too far down the board. And woe be unto the league if they let him slip to the Eagles. But I don't think he'll make it all the way there. The one I had, the more serious situation is Mike Green. Now, it should be noted I'm a big Mike Green fan, but there were allegations about things that he'd done at Virginia, and he said yes. He made it clear that he felt bad about it. He was immature and all the stuff all the stuff people said, but he said yes, it did happen. He was involved in 2 sexual assaults and copped to it. He said that yes, that happened. So that's going to hurt him. I mean, there's no 2 ways around that. He'll be all the way off certain teams' boards. There are some teams that just all the way off, and whoever gets him is going to get a character scratch and dent discount on it, which may be a round, maybe 2 rounds. Because of his ability, he will be drafted. Don't fool yourself. He'll be drafted. Somebody is going to roll the dice.
So 17 Sacks says yes, he's going to get drafted.
Oh, he's definitely getting drafted. Yeah, he's getting drafted. No, don't. Yeah. I mean, we all watched a draft where live we saw a man with a gas mask on inhaling, cannabis smoke. Now that's less serious than what's involved here, but you didn't see it happen, right? There's something about the visceral impact of in real time being subjected or being exposed to someone's behaviors. What I can tell you is that he seemed to express genuine remorse, and he, said he's gone through a process of, being re-educated about, whatever, all the stuff there, about consent and boundaries and things like that. There's some other guys with less serious stuff. I mean, like Pierce himself is a big, park wherever you want to guy. Apparently he has, I think, 6 very old unpaid parking tickets, and some other guys had other, more peccadillo type legal stuff, not as serious as the, I just talked about. And then some of them just had other, I don't get too deep into the, so-and-so didn't seem, to love football as much as we wanted. I mean, not everybody's a rah-rah guy, right? I mean, that's the thing I'd like to just remind people. There are some guys who, and some guys who are saying all the right things, but they're doing it because they've been media trained really well to say all the right things. I'm going to just shout out a guy for being super authentic, super authentic, super authentic. Mr. Imbo, right? Marcus Imbo he's hilarious. He's straight up hilarious. I asked him a few questions. He had some fantastically funny answers. And Charles Grant, right? Offensive linemen usually have a good sense of humor. They got off a couple of good lines. Both those guys are going to go earlier than people think. Charles Grant, despite the fact that he's a quote-unquote small school prospect, if he makes it to the 4th round, he won't make it out of the 4th round. I can tell you that. That is one of those bet grandma's insulin money kind of things. He's not making it out. If he makes it to the 4th, he's not making it out of the 4th.
I don't know if he makes it past day 2.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear. I won't be shocked either if that doesn't happen.
He was in my top 5 for a reason, and I've got him going a lot earlier than round 4.
Right. I'm saying that's the floor. But as I said, I think that there's a run on guys who people think might be able to play left tackle. If it's even a suspicion that you might be able to play left tackle, you're going earlier than most people think. Yeah. And that's going to push some of the other positions a little further down. So don't be shocked if your favorite wide receiver goes a little later than you think. Don't be shocked if your favorite, there's probably really one first-round linebacker, so I won't even say linebacker. Don't be shocked if your favorite corner goes a little later than you think, because there's going to be a bit of a run on potential left tackle types. And as we all know, there's not 32 current starting level left tackles in the NFL right now. So teams that know they need one are not going to pussyfoot around. When they realize, oh, this guy could be our guy, they're going to go grab that guy. So people trying to move Banks and Campbell to guard, unless they flat out stink it up at tackle, those guys are tackles. I'm come by here to tell you, I've seen them work out. I got the 3/8 of an inch deal with Campbell. Yeah, 32 and 5/8. I get it, but it's not like he's a pterodactyl. I mean, he didn't come in at 30 and 7/8 or something crazy. 32 and 5/8 is sufficient. There have been a few guys. Balaga, Bakhtiari, I think, was even slightly shorter arms than him.
No, he was a 31-inch guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was
probably
the shortest.
31 and 3/4, wasn't he?
3/4, right.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the shortest arm success stories, but I don't think he's going to kick it.
Slater and Sewell have also been, with shorter arms, and they've come into this league and they've both dominated. I'm tired of hearing that every tackle needs to have a 34-inch reach. It is ridiculous.
It is exciting when it happens, but yes, there have been a lot of successful tackles. I think Logan Mankins was under the 33-inch line as well, if memory serves. It's. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, because everything matters, but I think people overestimate how important it is.
Yeah, you're right, Bill. I think the reason why is you could tell, and why I don't feel that way with Campbell. I know a lot of people are saying, well, the arm length is. If you watch the film, he moves his feet so well, the arm length is not a problem. It's the guys that have the average feet in short arms are the guys you got to worry about.
Yes, correct. Well, I mean, even if you have long arms and bad feet, I'm still kicking you inside. I don't care if you have 36-inch arms. If you can't move your feet, you can't play tackle. So,
I said to both of you guys, I always judge an offensive lineman by his feet first.
Yes.
That's where I look at first, is the footwork. That is my number one thing with any offensive lineman, be it a guard, tackle, or a center, is their footwork. And then I work my way up.
Yep.
Because we all know that offensive linemen, and they'll tell you, are the smartest men on that field. So there you go.
Right. And the next thing is, can they bend? Right. So like you can see that when you watch the tackles, when you see a guy like Trapillo, who's a good player, but you can see a little stiffness there. It's like, oh yeah, you're probably gonna be on the right side, right?
So you're robotic in his kick slide.
Yeah, you'll see those little things. Which guy looks kind of like a giant robot, right? Those things that sort of let you know, oh yeah, you're probably a right tackle. And there are some guys who legitimately could play almost any position along the line, right? And those guys have value. Those guys have, value is putting it mildly, especially for teams that only dress 7 offensive line, which terrifies me. Like, wow, that takes some guts, but some teams do it. So at least one of those guys has to be able to play every single position along the line, because otherwise you can't get away with only dressing 7. The last thing I'll say before we sort of, I guess, go back around the room. Okay, so the linebacker group has only one sort of surefire, even top 40 guy, right? And once again, John Campbell could get pushed out, not because of anything he's done, but just because of the run on other positions. But I think he finds a way somewhere into the first. But I will not be shocked if he gets pushed into the early second. And then like we said, it's sort of flavors for the third quarterback race. The same thing for the linebackers. Every linebacker not named Campbell, not named Jihad, there's who do you like, right? So there's people who will like a guy like Kaiser. I think linebacker coaches and coordinators will love Kaiser. He's got some limitations, and he's another older prospect, but super smart. I mean, he's a guy that doesn't fake it. You could tell he loves ball, for real. So many of the Notre Dame guys opted out of certain things because of how long their season ended. Kaiser showed up ready to go.
He did everything. He did
everything. And at the Senior Bowl, right? He showed up at the Senior Bowl ready to roll. So that's a guy that just loves ball.
And that's that's a guy who's played 70 games over his 6 seasons with Notre Dame. He loves the game, and it's obvious. It's just obvious.
You can tell. I can tell that Betch loves the game. There's certain guys that I can tell that they haven't been just trained to say the right things. I can tell they legitimately love football. Like it radiates outward, from them. And so I think that there will be, I think the linebacker run is probably mid to late second for those teams that decide they need a linebacker. And there's some linebackers who can cover, and that'll give them some value. The safety group, and once again, am I biased? Yes. But it's I think people are sleeping on the safety group. Jonas Sanker really helped himself. Malachi Starks didn't do anything to hurt himself. Like in the article I'm writing, since people use the term stock, I'm going to treat it truly as stocks with strong buy, stronghold, hold, sell, and then like panic sell, right? And there's not too many panic sells, not many, but there's a few guys who kind of hurt themselves a little bit, either with what they said or what they did. But for the most part, for 90+% of the participants, of the 329, I would say, 304 either maintained or helped. There's probably legitimately only a handful of guys that really hurt themselves. But yeah, there were some.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to join you, Bill, and I would love to have. Hopefully, you got a chance to sneak in the Steak and Shake and chop it up with some of the guys in between workouts. That was always where I caught up with a lot of the scouts. Everybody ran in there for a quick burger and some fries and a shake. But by the way, since we're giving shout out to the city of Indianapolis. The combine should never leave Indy.
Right.
Okay?
It needs to stay exactly where they have it.
All right. There's a reason why it was chosen, and it was central for all the teams. But when you look at the layout of Indy, it is unique. There is no other city where you can do what you do with the combine there, right? Every hotel is there. The workouts are here. The convention center where the bench press and the interviews are done right across the street.
Yeah.
You can walk to everything,
Yep.
not drive and park here and park there and Uber here and Uber there. You just walk. You're walking around. You catch people in the street, So I'm in White Castle talking to coaches. Stuff like that doesn't happen in most places when stuff happens.
Yeah, now, see, that's my first place that I'm going to.
Well, that's my first stop because that's my
White Castle, right? I mean,
that's my food that gets me through the combine, right? I come back to the room after the workout. I'm chomping down on some burgers as I'm working on scouting reports, right? So that's what you keep in the hotel. Like, you keep going. You buy a Crave case the minute you get there, and you just you go out for the lunch and breakfast. But in the room for dinner with some White Castle. That's how it goes. And you fly out.
Absolutely.
And when did you come back, Bill?
I drove back Sunday night, so I was there from just before noon, a little before noon Wednesday until Sunday night. So
you weren't part of the mad rush because you drove.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay. See, yeah.
I mean,
there's always a mad
drive to the Senior Bowl. It's a layup.
That's a lot easier for you to drive to Indy. Yeah. So there's always a mad rush after the last workout, right?
Yep.
What happens? There are some scouts that stay and they're still packing everything up till the next day. But a lot of the other guys get ready to go to pro days. So everybody literally, once that last workout hits, everybody goes rushing to the airport to go catch their flight. So last time I was there, it was like that. I'm sitting there and I watched the workout from the gate because, I didn't have a chance. I didn't drive. I took the shuttle and checkout was before the workout ended. So I watched it from the gate at the airport. And as soon as it was over, all of a sudden, floods of scouts are all running to my gate because we're all flying out from the same gates, basically.
Yep.
Your favorite Cowboys coach at the time, Jason Garrett, was there. Charlie Katz, Brian.
Who's favorite? What?
So,
Coach Klopper is nowhere near my favorite Cowboy. Good Lord.
Very nice guy, though. Very nice
Yes,
guy.
he is, but he was a horrible head coach, and that's
I wasn't horrible, Greg.
Yes, he
Come on,
was.
give a guy a little bit of credit. You know,
I was ready to get him out of the town after his half season. So
he was not Newt Rockney or Vince Lombardi, but he sure as hell wasn't Ray Handley, Dave Campo, and many other guys that came to the league as head coaches that should never have been head coaches. At least the guy had a winning record as a head coach.
Right. Shout out to Les Steckel and Jerry Burns. The Vikings have a little run going there for a second. If you go back in their history.
No, this wasn't Lindy Infante, and Jason Garrett was a little bit better than that. But for real, I must say this, and everybody's going to talk about Shedeur and he turned guys off. This has been a problem for many years, and this is why when we talk about hiring more minorities in your front offices and your scouting departments, why it matters.
Yep.
Right? Because when you have people who don't identify with the prospect, okay, because the way this came out with Shedeur, you would make it think that any of these guys have never met his father, okay? All right, you would think they've never met his father. He is just like Deion. Okay, this is one of Deion's closest kids. So it makes sense that he's going to be a lot like Deion. How could you not understand who you are dealing with?
Bingo.
The attitude that he has comes from his father. He has a very high self-confidence.
Which his dad had from Florida State onwards. He had his confidence. And that was the bottom line with Deion. And
I know people that scouted his father, and they said the same thing when they talked to Bowden about him coming out of Florida State.
Bingo.
So
even Shiloh has his own level of confidence, although it's much lesser to a degree.
Well, Shiloh's closer to Pilar. There's a different dynamic with Shiloh. Exactly. He's a little bit closer to Pilar.
Exactly. But again, when I messaged you yesterday about what Todd McShay had to say on his show about Shedeur, I should have said, and Bill was right, these are probably a couple of white guys that were in those interviews. Yep.
I can tell you.
I can guarantee it.
Well, and again, they both said he had horrible interviews and all this other. But
they were wild with Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If it was that same organization that drafted Zach, is one of the two teams that McShay was talking with, because he just said it was two teams in the top 10, right? So that's where he left it. But he did say that the interviews were both horrible by Shedeur, blah, blah, blah. And again, I'll bet you any money it was guys with my skin color. I'll bet it.
So the things that are true and the things that are not true. The guy knows football, right? So it wasn't him not knowing ball, right? So when someone says, see, I want to quantify, because people say or try to qualify/quantify. When people say horrible interview, there's different ways to have a quote unquote horrible interview. There are guys who are unprepared, but I promise you he wasn't unprepared, right? Mm-hmm. There are guys who are just nervous or shy, but I promise you he wasn't either one of those things.
Not at all.
We can eliminate unprepared, right? We can eliminate nervous and shy. We can eliminate not understanding football, right? So we know it wasn't one of those four things that caused him to have a quote unquote horrible interview. So all that's left now is the old, I don't like the cut of his jib factor, right? Right. That's all that's left. We've eliminated him not knowing football. We've eliminated him not being able to communicate. We've eliminated him being a person that doesn't have a strong personality and can't come across well in a room. We've eliminated him being unprepared for an interview. We've eliminated all those factors. So all that's left is them not liking his personality, right?
Bingo. And again, when he came out and he threw his offensive line under the bus earlier this year, what did I say to you both of you? He has to stop doing that. That is the one thing you cannot do, especially in an NFL room.
No.
If you throw your offensive lineman under the bus, good luck.
And it's different when you're he'll have to learn when you're dealing with grown men. It's a different
Exactly.
story.
Exactly.
Geno Smith had to learn that lesson the hard way, right?
Yeah.
When you're the big man on campus in college, you can get away and say a lot of things in the locker room. When you're in the NFL, everybody's got a bill to pay. Nobody wants to be talked to like less than a man, especially in this day and age.
Exactly.
Coaches could get away with that back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Mid 90s, you kind of got a little away from it, right? You know, Keyshawn telling Rich Kotite what he could do with himself, things like that.
Yeah.
But this day and age, there are players that make more than coaches. There are definitely players that make more than other players. When a guy accounts for 15% of your salary cap, he's going to have a lot of say and sway in that locker room, right? So, However, there's still a line he can't cross. He can't go up and tell somebody, what to do with himself, right? There may be a fist coming back at him, right? So he's going to have to learn.
Discovered, right? Yes,
he's going to have to learn the levels that he can do and not do in the NFL locker room. What guys he can push and not push. When we talk about Pierce, hearing his demeanor reminds me of Randy Gregory without the drug problem. Without one of those guys that, in the locker room, is he cool? Is he not cool? Is he one of those guys? I don't know. Randy Gregory, not exactly the most media-friendly person, not exactly the most locker room-friendly person, can have a isolationist type deal. But he also is a manic depressive who's now finally gotten himself on proper meds and regulated, using weed and everything else to compensate for said issues. So there are guys, and I guess maybe we'll find out if that's the case. Maybe he does have a mental issue. This is why I think that's always should have been a part of this process. Okay. You want to catch that coming in so you can get the guy help early in his career so he doesn't spiral through 2 or 3 teams before he gets the help that he needs, or suspensions because he's over-medicating or self-medicating for something that he can't control. This is why I always advocated for the mental health part of the testing. Get rid of the Wonderlic. Let them meet with psychiatrists who can talk to the guys and maybe get them to open up about certain things that they need help with.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's far more important than any Wonderlic exam could ever be. James Pierce, though, to me, would have been a New England Patriot had Bill Belichick been still there, because, my Lord, yes, I love you, James. I love you. You don't like the media either? I love you.
Yeah, but Bill would have berated him too. So
yeah. I mean, Bill still would have been after him like he was everybody else, but still.
James did shut up, James. Get out of the way.
Yeah, it would have been the perfect match, though. However, because of course, and I don't care if a guy does not want to answer questions from a media. I don't care about that.
Right, and there's a sort of bleed. So I mean, you and I think all three of us remember when the combine was like a rumor, right? Now it's this big event, fans attend, and all this stuff. I can remember when literally it was just a rumor. We knew it happened. We weren't sure exactly when or where. And so I remember, like Paul Zimmerman, whoever, somebody would hear stuff about what had happened. Yeah. I think it was in his article in Sports Illustrated that I heard the Bo Jackson legend and the Deion Sanders legend back in the closed combine days when Quadra was still running it. And so the combine has changed a lot. And the time was, if you didn't do something and you were healthy, they would put out the bad mouth on you. Like, it was like, the kid's a malcontent, the kid's such and such, lazy or whatever it is. And, so they would basically like guilt trip them into doing, even if they were a little bit dinged up, into doing pretty much everything at the combine. So
And then 2 years ago, you had the running backs all say, we're not running the 40. None of them did. They all refused to run the 40. Huh?
So I'm all for player empowerment. I do think that there should be different tiers of participation, though. If a guy wants to come and just meet with players, just meet with coaches, GMs, whatever, that should be like a Monday thing. whatever position group you're in, if you're a healthy scratch, or if you're not healthy, right? If you're people who can't work out or have chosen not to, we run you all in and out on one day. Boom. Right? That's all taken care of day one. And then you guys can go back and work on whatever you're working on to get ready. And then you have to be at least a partial participant, So maybe you're doing everything, but you got to do, let's say, at least 3 out of however many tests. Let's say 3 is the threshold. It just to actually work out with your position group on the day that your position group goes. I think that what people misunderstand is you really, unless you like spontaneously combust during your testing, you rarely actually hurt yourself that much. I think that while there are exceptions to any rule, that for the most part, if you come and you work out, like even with Gunnar Helm, who was hurt, right, and pushed through it, and now we know why times were so bad and things like that. Somebody's gonna say, what a warrior, right? What a tough guy, right? He pushed through and got through it. That's gonna at least even out the poor testing. I don't think, like I said, there's a few exceptions. If you're a small player, like I said, if you're small and slow, right? You show up and you're smaller than people expected and slower than people expected. Yeah, that's not great. But you get a second bite at the apple when your pro day rolls around. Maybe you can put on a few pounds. Maybe you're faster. If you do nothing and you're putting all your eggs in the pro day basket, you better have a really good pro day, right? I guess that's what I have to say to that. I get it. Now, for quarterbacks, it's a slightly different deal, especially, the ones that know that athletic ability isn't a big deal in their game anyway. If you are a touch and anticipation thrower and you don't know these guys, you're thinking, I'm going to look bad, right? I get that. I still think, once again, what I just said, giving yourself 2 bites of the apple makes more sense than giving yourself 1 bite of the apple. But like I said, if a guy's legitimately nicked up, Cam Skatebu said, I can do this and this because, I don't feel 100% yet. You've seen his running style. He takes hits, but he gives them out too. A couple of guys, said, I've got this, I've got it, this is tweaked or that is that, or, once again, some of the teams that made it deep in the playoffs, those guys are still dealing with a few, nicks and bumps. That's fine. Now, when a guy is a top guy and a healthy scratch, right? One of the top guys, and he's just doing it to sort of protect, almost like you know what I mean? Like I don't love that, not because, and once again, I'm pro players doing whatever they decide to do or not do, but I think it shows a certain lack of belief almost in that you can, continue to help yourself. Now, if you're the number 1 quarterback in the class and you're the number 1 rated prospect in the world, I get how you can't help yourself more. But unless you are literally the guy at number 1, I still feel like, maybe you can do something. Maybe you convince some team that needs you but doesn't need whoever is the projected number 1 to make sure they get you, or maneuver their way around the board. And then the last thing I'll say is rumors, right? The other thing the combine is rife with is it's like, late period Byzantine Empire level, like rumors and spying and innuendo and whatnot. Now, I am old enough, both chronologically and combine / scouting, to know that we are now in peak lying season, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're going to hear some. If this is your first rodeo, if this is the first time you've been through this, prepare yourself. You're going to hear some things. Some of it is going to be just wild. Now, there's something called agents, right? Now, not every agent does this, but a significant number of agents do this. They will get in someone's ear, someone in the media, or if they know somebody with a team, right? And they'll say, I heard so-and-so about such. I'm representing so-and-so. He played with blah, blah, blah. And he said that he did this, right? Yeah. He stomps on puppies after each game, whatever it is, right? You're going to hear, right? You're going to hear some things. And while some of it, once again, will probably have a kernel of truth, you're going to see some things get stretched and exaggerated because, especially at the top, right? Yeah. If somebody's, the difference between being pick number 114 and pick 104 is not that big a deal. but the
No.
difference between being pick 3 and pick 8 is, right? Even though it's 5 as opposed to 10 places different, it's a bigger difference
Yeah.
in terms of how you're perceived, in terms of how you're paid. So there's going to be some stuff. You're going to hear more stuff about how somebody bombed this and did terribly at that and whatever else. But for the most part, players who go to the combine and compete help themselves. I would say for the vast majority, the players who went and did things help themselves. And now we've gotten to the point where if you do the agilities, it's like an extra check mark because so many players who do everything else are just skipping agilities now.
Nobody runs a long shuttle anymore. It's like a dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Jordy Nelson, he can do like the Miami Dolphins do. At the end of each combine, he can pop his bottle of champagne because his long shuttle, combine record will probably never be broken.
No.
Yeah. And again, it's all line season, even with the existing players. I mean, we saw it with Osa, because Osa Odigizua was supposed to be franchise tagged by the Cowboys. Well, no, he actually signed a deal that was a hometown discount.
Yep.
Thank goodness. Being a Cowboys fan, thank goodness. But again, and there's rumors out there that he was going to be offered a 7-figure deal by one franchise. Huh? Ho. And the Cowboys ended up signing him, though.
Probably more than 7, probably more like 8 figures, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
No, he was supposed to be over $100 million for his contract.
Well, that's way more than 7. That's 9.
That's 9 figures. But he was supposed to sign with one team for over $100 million.
I don't know if I buy that, but I think he could have made a lot of money.
That's been a solid rumor down in Dallas all day long today. So
well, I'll say this much. This is where the combine has to start to adapt even more. Okay, one of the things we've always accused them of being is a little rigid with certain things, right? The guys, by sticking to their preseason lists, not adapting during the season, and inviting guys and subbing certain guys. Well, I think you get rid of the snubs if you start talking to people. You put your initial invites out there. You start putting guys on there as standbys. Just like we do for the bowl games now, right? You get guys that come and get hurt. You have standbys. Well, the same thing with the combine. You come in, but you're not going to work out. Great. We got somebody who's going to do the workout. You can still meet with teams. We could let you talk. Right? Yeah. These guys are going to go do the workout. We're going to get you. The most important part of it, besides the medical, is the workout. Yep. The meetings, yes, are big because you're not going to get a chance to pull all these guys to your facility too. But those are the two heaviest weighted things. There are guys that have some bad interviews and still get drafted high because their medical was clear, their workout was phenomenal, their film was excellent. You know what? He didn't have a great meeting, but you know what? Well, that can be fixed. But I tell you what, this guy on the field does everything we want him to do. So why not do that? Okay, we know certain guys that come, they're not going to do anything great. We got guys that are come out there work out that need to be timed anyway, and it gets rid of the snubs. It gets those guys that need to get timed, weighed, measured accurately back out there, so you're not waiting till their pro day.
Yeah,
I'm not in love with guys sitting out the combine because you know what? I'd rather stand on business at the combine and take it easy at my pro day, than doing all this run up to your pro day, where. Let's be face it, I've been to pro days. Pro days are less of a workout than a combine is. Okay, because the pro day you get there, it's all scripted. Half of the time you're not watching, unless it's a top quarterback, you're not watching many of the throws. You watch a few, you're talking to the scout next to you. Did you see the other guy? Did you get the right time on it? Which times you get on that? Because you're not, it's scripted. We know it. You're in your own confines. You're throwing to your guys you've thrown to 1,000,001 times.
Yeah.
How you adapt to other receivers in that situation at the combine means something. How you time well in an environment that's not your own matters. How you perform in an environment that's not your own matters. Right. All that stuff matters. So when you have the chance to do that, put up the numbers you did, and then go back to your pro day and stand on business. I don't have to run all this stuff. I timed well. The first time I did it, you want to put me through some drills, I can do some drills for you. We just want to talk, we can talk.
Yeah.
I've seen that. And to me, that makes a lot more sense than the opposite.
The only two pro days
about the other guys that didn't attend.
The only two pro days I've seen where that was changed was Bill Belichick was at one of them, and he wanted guys to do things that weren't on their schedule, and the other one was at Stanford with Davis Mills and the New Orleans DB that I love, Paulson Adebo.
Yeah.
And they were both taken by the Cowboys coaches who were there and put through different drills than what the pro day had, and that's the only time I've ever seen that. Done.
Bill, maybe you remember Georgia's pro day when Carter worked out. Everybody was talking about how tired he looked and this and that. Yeah. Do you remember the D-line coach that worked him out? I forgot his name.
Yes. And that's the thing he does. He wants to see if he can.
Yeah, so he purposely wears you out.
Yeah. He's trying to see if you'll tap out. Yeah. It wasn't Carl Dunbar. It was oh my gosh, old school guy though. I know exactly what you're talking about. He does this every time they let him run the workout. But yeah, he's trying to make you tap. That's his thing.
Yeah, he wants to push you and burn you out. You know, he wants to see your limits. Yeah. Right. And that's exactly what we talk about with the pro days. If you're standing on business at the combine and doing what you got to do, you know, if they want you to work out the pro day and that's all you got to do is that one little workout, you ain't got to do all the other stuff. By skipping the combine, you have to do all that stuff now.
Yeah.
Right, your pro day. And let's say your times aren't impressive. How does that help or hurt you?
Oh, you mean like the entire roster of Texas A&M that who was all slow?
Yeah. You know, skipping the combine was always the litmus test. How do I got to improve my pro day, or am I good enough that I don't have to do anything? Right. And think about how bad it was. Well, it was already bad enough for Tease Tabor, but how bad it would have been had he skipped the combine, you know, working at the combine, and then went to his pro day and put up those times at Florida. Woo! Yep. He dropped hard as it was, but he was still at least drafted in the third.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He would have been possibly later than that. And the only thing he done was the pro day.
Right. Right. Yeah, like I said, I think it's advisable if you can to give yourself 2 bites of the apple, right? You give yourself a couple of different chances. You give yourself, you know, you've got 2 in the chamber. And now if it turns out you only need 1, you can take the other one out, put it back in your bandolier. And you're not, unless you, I mean, once again, if you're one of the top guys, you're going to have all 32 teams make your pro day. But the opportunity to have all 32 teams, not just represented, but have multiple people, coaches, GMs, scouts, right? In some cases, teams will send a very large number of representatives to the combine. You're probably going to see, some teams will also send GMs to a pro day, but you're going to see, you know, a bunch of scouts, the occasional GM as well. Once again, especially if you're one of the top guys. You know, if you're a top 4, top 5, even top 10 guy, you might see a fair number of GMs. But if you're anywhere outside of that top, you're not going to see all 32 teams with multiple people there. It's just more chances for good things to happen. And I feel that there's things you can see about a player because it's more stressful, right? The combine is more stressful than a pro day. You're not sleeping in your own bed. You're not getting as much sleep. You're having to deal with, you know, people, in addition to the formal and informal, people just grab you, right? You know, it's like, hey, can I ask you, you know, right? There's people who just ask, you know, hey, just want to talk to you real second. Oh, you know, we have, well, your teammate such and such, he said, blah, blah, blah. You know, tell me about what you think about that. So sometimes even beyond the, you know, there's the bumping into prospects that people will sometimes do even beyond both the informal and formal meetings that are scheduled or essentially allowed. You know, there's some fast and looseness around some of the things that happen in restaurants and other places where people sidle over and fire a quick question or two. But the combine is its own special creature. It's different from a pro day. And I think that the impression you make there resonates more, goes farther in people's minds and sticks with them longer because it's so intensified.
Yeah.
There's a lower level of intensity on everything that goes on at a pro day, at least in part because you are back at home. I mean, back at home where you played.
So let's jump right into the wide receivers.
Let's.
All right. So it's time to start some top fives, and we'll dig deeper into the position after that. Oh, breaking news from Greg Rector here. Chargers have released Joey Bosa.
And
I'm not shocked.
This is also a day where Tyler Lockett was released. Devontae
Yeah.
Adams was
Well,
released.
They seem to be. Yeah.
We're seeing guys getting shoved out of towns in a big way.
Well, the Seattle moves I kind of foresaw, right? They're going to start jettisoning the old Pete Carroll guys, and start bringing in the younger bodies. So those guys are going to move on. That I understood. Bosa's a little bit of a shock to me
because he just hasn't been healthy. I think he's
it's been Bosa's health. Plus, of course, he's playing for a coach that went to that school up north. And where did Bosa go to school again? Ohio State. So again, that was a bad mix right there. You're gone now, Joey.
Well, if he was still playing at an elite level, I think they would have found some way to overlook that. It's the production versus cost analysis on a guy like Bosa. Bosa at this point in his career says either you guys do a fairly aggressive restructuring, or you thank him for all of his effort and wish him all the best in his future endeavors. And there'll be a market for him. Maybe not the market he's anticipating, but there'll be a market for him. Even Lockett, obviously at this point in his career, he's maybe no longer a dominant player, but there's a place for him. There's a team that'll want to bring him as a wide receiver 3 kind of player, maybe in a low end 2, high end 3.
Yeah, those guys are going to end up on somebody's scratch and dent sale for sure. He's used, but he's still got some pretty good years left in him there.
Right.
And don't forget that since JSN has been there, he just has not been used in the offense anywhere near as much. So again, what wear and tear did he have the last 2 seasons when he saw his production going down? So if he goes to a place that can use him, because the man can really run a route. He runs routes very well. And that is, to me, the biggest indicator of being able to separate from DBs is being able to run your routes properly. Tyler Lockett could be a very good piece for somebody.
All right. Great. So, Bill, since you weren't with us last week, we're going to start off with your top 5. All right. So, with that being said, here we go, Bill.
I think everybody has the same number 1. I think that's going to be pretty uniform. And Tetairoa McMillan is your classic big-bodied, wall you off, jump over you, long arms, strong hands. In a different kind of class, he'd be probably more in that 4.5 range, but there's only a handful of the top guys who have size. He's probably taller than the next tallest guy on this list by about 2 inches. And, he's, like I said, a power receiver. Because he has a strong basketball background, I do think that he's, not a bad athlete. He's a good athlete, but he's not the kind of guy that is a true deep threat. Luther Burden, however, who tested, ran the 4.4s, which exactly what I expected, and also had a really showed quickness. He largely overcame quarterback play that I'll just say was from inconsistent to sometimes just underwhelming. He managed to produce consistently at Missouri. He is tremendously agile. He has great field vision. He can find big plays where they don't seem to be there to be found. he's going to be. I mean, you just mentioned, what's going on with Seattle. I don't think he makes it to Seattle, but if they somehow got him, it would be a great replacement for who they've moved on from. Now, Travis Hunter is here because there are teams, at least 2 or 3, that I know for a fact have him on their have their board as a wide receiver. That's not how I see him, but I do know for a fact that there are teams that see him and like him as a receiver. He is raw, though. He is quite raw. His route running is, I would say, below average. His route deception is almost non-existent, but he's such a good athlete. It doesn't tend to matter. So when they try to, quote unquote, run the route for him, they can't do it at his tempo. So It doesn't matter as much. So yes, it's the old thing about, where the guy says in Billy Jack, I'm going to kick you with this foot on that side of your face. It's sort of like that with his route running. Yeah, you may know what route he's about to run, but can you stop him? But yes, I think Travis Hunter will play some offense no matter where he goes. And with some teams, he might play a significant amount of offense. There are some teams that like him a lot at wide receiver. Jalen Noel is a player that I thought I was too high on initially. And then he's done what he's done. It's like, thank you, Jalen. You've justified my excitement surrounding you. He's a very good route runner. We just talked about route running. He's a very good route runner. He's explosive. He is powerful. He's an accelerator. He has maybe not elite hands, but very good hands. Like I said, very good after the catch. Can even block a little bit. A complete guy. And showed that he was as good an athlete as I thought he was. Like I thought I might be too high on him, but like I said, he bailed me out there. This player at various points has been different players. This fifth one, that's been Royals, Jalen Royals at various points. There's a few different players that have cycled through that number 5 spot. I eventually came back to Emeka Egbuka for a couple reasons. One, I think he's got almost like zero bust factor, right? I think at the very least he'll be good. There are certain players that is his ceiling the highest. In fact, of the guys on the list, he may have the lowest ceiling, but he also may have the highest floor of anybody on this list not named Luther Burden. I feel like Egbuka's floor is super, super high. I feel like there's no way I think the worst case scenario is he's a elite level wide receiver 3 or, a pretty darn good wide receiver 2. But I believe he has number 1 potential. I think he's going to produce wherever he goes. I think he's another guy that has that. He's quarterback friendly, as they say, high IQ, catches virtually everything thrown his way, and does maybe not as much as Burden, Hunter, or Noel after the catch, right? The guys at each end are really great pure receivers, but maybe not the run after the catch guys that the middle guys are, between McMillan and Egbuka is really developed, really nuanced receivers. And then the guys in the middle, maybe not quite as finished as products, especially Hunter is not quite as finished as the product, but tremendous athletic ability and guys who can, like I said, give you something after the catch. So that's my list.
All right. Greg, we're going to bring those up in a second, but I think this position, because of some of the people that are in it, and I think with the corners too, I think your grades may not match your rankings. I think that's a fair assessment.
If I were just to grade Hunter for his technical acumen as a receiver, yeah, he's not going to be in the top 5 because he's not really a wide receiver. He's a defensive back who plays wide receiver, or the other way around, maybe, if you think of him the other way. But he's out there playing because, once again, people think about the game stuff. They forget about the practice stuff. They can't make practice longer for Travis Hunter because he plays 2 positions. That's not allowed.
No. Greg, I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
He's having to try to get all that work in at 2 different positions that require 2 different types of film study in the same amount of time as everyone else. So he's not finished as a product. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely. Greg, here's yours.
All right. So you do not see Travis Hunter on my wide receiver rankings. There you go. Tetroa McMillan, and I don't care that he didn't run the 40. You know why I don't care? Because guess what? They brought back the Madden game. And because of the Madden game, these players have chips in their shoulder pads. So guess what? We already know how quick Tetroa McMillan is. Thank you. Egbuka is my number 2 receiver. Bottom line, he is the best number 2 wide receiver in this league ever since he started at Ohio State. I don't care that Jermaine Smith is this great, flashy, run down the field, Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, all those guys who were the flashy, run down the field type guys for Ohio State. Emeka Egbuka is, bottom line to me, the best route runner of this group, and that's why he gets my number 2 ranking. Luther Burden was 3rd. Now, I have Matthew Golden as my 4th. Golden, I pointed out to you, Jeff, on the final, on the last word. Hello. Why isn't Golden being considered the same way that Isaiah Bond is? I don't get it. Matthew Golden was way better than Isaiah Bond. Yes, I understand Bond had an injury. That's all fine and dandy. But then I also include a Canadian as my number 5 receiver, Alligator Moore from Stanford. And if you want to say that Tetroa McMillan didn't have a quarterback this year and still produce numbers, well, LMAR also produced a lot of decent numbers for the Stanford Cardinal without a real good quarterback. So those are my top 5.
All right. So we'll jump into mine and we'll get into the positions, and mine will be real brief. Okay. Gee, McMillan at the top. We've heard that before. Hunter did make my top 5. And reason being, I think he's more of a receiver than a corner. I'm in that group. I think if you polish him up and teach him how to be deceptive with his route running and stemming defenders, and he could be an excellent wide receiver. I've seen him as a corner. I like him as a corner. I think he'll be a good corner. However, I've also seen him beaten by lesser receivers. And that kind of gives me a little bit of pause about saying that he's going to continue. I think he grows into, I think he can be all pro at receiver or Pro Bowl at best on the defensive side. So either way, he's going to be the first prospect on my board that I have 2 different grades for and a combined grade for, because he's getting graded at 2 positions. Yeah. So, right. But athleticism, if I went by draft grade, he probably tops all these guys on the list. But this is not by draft grade. This is by rankings, how I believe they're going to be at the next level. And I think if a wide receiver, could be your number 2 receiver in this draft. Emeka Egbuka, for all of the things Greg said about him, it's exactly that. Same thing with Luther Burden. Right, now, Golden did make mine. He came on strong this year. I didn't have him that high going into the season. Coming out of the season, I felt a lot better about him. Yeah. So in all the guys we mentioned in yours that are not in mine, I like those guys. I just happen to like Golden slightly a little bit more to put him in my top 5. But absolutely, that's my top 5 right there.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a lot of receivers in this class. Not a ton of X's, right? We talk about those X receivers that, who could do it all, and then you got the other guys. Well, a lot more Z's and slots in this class. Even some of the bigger ones, you're not going to want to put them on the line as an X where they get beat up by the corner. You want to kind of move them around and hide them from people, so they're more Z's than X's, or they're just slot guys who are shifty and quick, and you want to let them work with a 2-way go off the man that's covering them. So let's get into those guys right now. So looking at the wide receiver position, everybody especially since Senior Bowl has been talking about Jack Beck. So I like the kid. I like the grit. He's got that Wayne Corbett heart and a bigger body.
Yes, right.
But without the blazing speed.
Right. Yeah, he's not super fast, but he's got some toughness. He's got great hands. He's a good athlete. Not a great athlete, but a good athlete. One of my guys, and I 4.58 for him was a win, is Nick Nash, who only has been playing receiver for a couple of years, was recruited as a quarterback, was battling Nick Starkel at one point for the quarterback spot, and then finally settled in at receiver. I feel like situation is everything for certain players, but if he goes to a team like the Rams, right, where they don't care about, your 40 times so much, but are you tough? Are you smart? Quick? Do you have good hands? I feel like the right situation, he ends up being a wide receiver 3/4. Has a nice little run. I mentioned Royals, from Utah State earlier. The line, the little joke line I've been sort of using to describe him is that if Deebo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk had a baby, that baby would be Jalen Royals. He is, halfway between the two of them. He has some power. He's, once again, really good after the catch. Also can, maybe not an elite level route runner, but a good route runner. Another guy who can pluck the ball out of the air, natural hands. Ayamor would have been one of my guys in this portion, but instead I'll go with Torrey Horton, who really helped himself. Torrey Horton was a guy that people looked at as sort of a possession receiver, and then they saw him run. He had a fantastic day. We mentioned Jack Besh. Isaac Tesla is like fast Jack Besh, right? Maybe not quite as developed as a route runner as Besh, but another one of those bigger-bodied, tough guy receivers, but he took off like a shot in the 40. I mean, I hadn't seen that on tape when I watched Arkansas. So I will have – he's one of those guys that sends you back to the tape. And then I'll mention the other Iowa State wide receiver. I think Jaden Higgins, while he didn't exactly set the world on fire in the 40, otherwise had a good day at the Combine and had a good week in his time at Mobile. So there are teams that are definitely going to like him. He's going to get drafted somewhere probably early day 3 and have a nice career.
Yeah. One of the guys that I like his traits. Real interesting prospect. He had a solid showing, not great. Savion Williams, TCU.
Yep.
So he's one of those guys I think kind of earned himself a little bit of something this weekend. Not going to jump up boards, but I think he solidifies where teams may have had him. You look for a lot more out of the bigger frame guys, the longer guys.
Yep.
You expect the shorter guys to run fast. So a little shocking, Tez Johnson, how he ran.
Yeah.
But
he did well. Otherwise, he did well in the agilities. He had a good his 40 wasn't great. A guy that some people thought was a freak and I thought was a good athlete, and he's going to be in my hold section when I write my stock article. Trey Harris is the guy that NFL teams like more than draft Twitter does for the most part, right? NFL teams like him a lot. Do not be shocked if he goes pretty early day 2. Do not be shocked if he's off the board. If not in the top 50, then not far outside of it. But I think he might go somewhere, in the early to mid 50s.
Yeah. A little curious. What do you guys think of Mumpfield from Pitt?
I would. He plays all right on his film.
Yep.
But is he a guy that I got high up on my list? No, not really high.
No, I don't think he's high.
Yeah,
he's one of those guys. The reason why I asked about him because we talked about the kind of receivers we have throughout this class, and when I look at his film, he looks like a Z by the way he plays.
Yep.
But he doesn't show me the athleticism for the slot.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right.
No.
So, and he's not a small guy. He's 5'11", 186 technically is what he's listed. I'm not looking at his exact measurements right now, but so he's not a tiny guy. But we're not looking at the kid from Clemson from a few years ago. We're looking at a guy who's knocking on 6 foot, right?
Yeah.
And he's knocking on the door. He ain't in the room, but he's knocking on the door, right? But but he's just he when I look at him, he's a guy that you're going to play outside, off the line of scrimmage, and do things with motions to kind of play with him, as opposed to putting him in a slot where you're going to ask him to do certain things in a running game that he's not going to be comfortable with. He's not going to really be great at those double releases and being able to set up a two-way go. He's not really that. So it's like I see one thing with him and I see another thing with the film, and I don't see the two marrying into the player that I thought I would see.
No, and that's why I didn't have him. That's why I didn't have him that high, because again, he's one of these guys that, like you said, appears to be a Zed, but in the NFL, not likely. Right? Ty Felton had a great combine for himself.
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
and of course, if people didn't watch Maryland, and of course, a lot of people don't watch Maryland play. This kid was great on film as well.
Correct.
So he was a guy that had a great combine as well. Now there's a guy who could play a little X.
Yep.
Yes.
He can play some X.
Yep.
Yes. Listen, people that aren't paying attention going, who's Ty Felton? Well, if you're watching, he's in a lot of people's top 100s. Okay, that's how good a player Ty Felton is.
Yes, he is.
So you gotta really pay attention to every team when you're talking about scouting. Just don't look at the Power 5 guys and the guys at the top of the conference, because there are going to be players in those other schools. They may be the only dude there, but they're good. All right. So
like Charles Grant. Hello. Hey, listen, he is my remember when we first started doing this, and I said my pet cat.
Yes,
he's my pet cat for this draft.
We definitely let you put your flag on his back. Okay, so yes, there's a Greg Rector flag hanging on Charles Grant somewhere.
Bingo.
If he had a jersey on, we put your patch right here. It lets you know that you're an official sponsor of Charles Grant. So
exactly. Charles, if you're watching, you're my man.
I thought Kobe Hudson had a solid workout.
Yep.
And we talked about Ty Felton, and though Daquan Felton did not run fast, other than that, he had a pretty good combine showing. Virginia Tech was represented a little bit. The fastest running back, obviously, was a NC A&T grad, but grad transferred to Tech, and Vishal was one of my guys. I think that for teams that are looking for that wide receiver 2/3, right, that guy who you can maybe move around to multiple different positions, who can block a little and can run after the catch, can do some things in the open field. That there's really a lot of players you're going to like. The Chimere DK, the Florida kid, helped himself. He's going to go somewhere day 3 and be a wide receiver 4 for somebody right out of the box with a chance to maybe climb up to 3. I think he definitely stacked a little bit of cash.
I'll also name the other Maryland receiver who had a nice week, Caden Prather. He was just fine in my eyes.
Yep. Bill, since you were there, it reminds me. Did you get a chance to stick around for the extra workouts, the guys that wanted to see at other positions?
Yeah, I stuck around and watched a bunch of the guys snapping the football after the offensive line group. Mm-hmm. A couple of the smaller DN types did a few linebacker drills, like Jalen Walker and Powell Island, and
I know there were a few D linemen that they wanted to see as fullbacks. I know one of them was Howard Cross III was one of them.
Right.
And I know there were certain running backs they wanted to see at receiver.
Yeah.
Because I know they were talking about making them in the slots.
Right.
One of them, I go to my notes, I got to look for the name. because that factors into the receiver situation. Some of these running backs are going to be seen as slots, right?
Right.
Kiner was one of them.
Oh, right. That makes
okay.
sense. Yeah, for him it makes sense. Yeah. He can catch the ball pretty well. DeQuint Allen has really good hands too. The Syracuse running back. He's not super quick.
He's not the one I'm thinking of. Trying to see who it was. I'm looking at the names. It wasn't Jackson. It wasn't James.
Well, Jeff is looking for that. This is the fastest group of running backs ever at a combine since 2003.
Yeah,
tracking the numbers.
Right.
So
in the official timing era. Yep.
Yeah. So if you don't have Ashton Genty or Omarion Hampton, guess what? Plenty of these guys are just as quick. Do they have the same vision? Do they have the same contact balance? No. But again, these guys are going to be very good running backs.
Yep.
Marcus Yarns. Yarns.
Yeah, Delaware. Yeah.
And Rashard Smith was the last one.
Rashard Smith from SMU.
Yeah. Right. Well, Rashard Smith has played wide receiver. I mean, he's done that in games. So that's something, you can see on tape. And then Yarns is a guy that I talked with at the Senior Bowl. He said that there are teams that wanted to see him do that. He caught the ball some at Delaware, but he's not as developed as Rashard Smith is as a route runner or receiver. Yeah. But I can see why teams would want to at least kick the tires on that. Yes, right, Rashard Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Randall, new member of Team MBS Media. He'll be joining us at some point. For a couple of show in 3 days of the draft, so he'll be hanging around with us then too. Probably day 2 and 3 be hanging out with us a lot. So, but yes, it's. I mean, we've seen guys do that. We over the years, whether it was Dexter McCluster was one of those guys that it's too small to be a running back, but maybe we can make him into a slot. And I think he got there 5 years too soon, because he had gotten there 5 years later, it would have actually come true. Right.
Yeah, right. And sometimes a guy just doesn't quite have the ball skills, like DeAnthony Thomas. Several people tried with him, and he's one of those guys that had to sort of see the ball leave the quarterback's hands. He couldn't quite get to the point where he could turn the back on the quarterback, and
Bill, I got a question for you about the tight end from Syracuse, Oronde Gadsden. He's been moved to wide receiver on a couple of different mock draft simulators. Is he going to be a wide receiver, or is he going to be able to play tight end?
Well, I mean, he avoided the testing also. So that made it a little difficult. He is certainly on the smaller end amongst the tight ends.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if the line between big possession receiver and small tight end is
minimal.
Right. So I guess the money is the biggest difference nowadays, right?
Well, yeah.
If you ever have to put the cap on, deal with if you ever have to franchise them, then it's a different thing. I think he has a better chance to take advantage of things at tight end, simply because he'll be able to use his power, and size against safeties, and he'll be able to run away from linebackers. I think that big corners could give him trouble if he's asked to play outside. So I guess you're talking about a power slot if you're going to try to turn him into a receiver, and then you can still get him on the move and wham block with him and stuff like that. I guess what you're talking about. I could see him, going to be the move tight end to a team like the Colts if he tests well. The Colts don't like guys that don't test well. So he's one of those guys that's going to make us wait until his pro day, and obviously there'll be some Syracuse players that people are interested in.
Yeah.
Some people like Kyle McCord. He'll be able to catch balls from him there. And they've got a couple of the players, including the aforementioned LeQuint Allen, who I talked about amongst the pass receiving running backs. But Yeah, he's a guy he's got to make a decision. Well, he's making it. I guess the decision might be made for him depending on how he runs. If he runs 4.71, then the dream of playing receiver has pretty much died.
Yeah.
He gives me Jonnu Smith vibes. That undersized,
Right.
move tight end.
Yep.
That you're going to probably match up with certain people inside. Let the big inline Y do the inline Y stuff, and let him move around, and you can run your boots with him getting into the flat. You can motion him around the different parts of the formation and give him option routes from there. I think that's where he fits into. If you try to make him into a traditional Y, he's not that. He doesn't have. Right. He doesn't have the frame for it. It's not his skill set either. He was pretty detached at Syracuse.
Yeah.
It's. I think that's more of his speed. I think that's best where he is. And you can add a little weight to his frame and let him be an inline Y and get him a little stronger so he can help in the running game. I think that's where I think. Like I said, the closest call is Jonnu. He may not run as fast as Jonnu.
Yeah.
Body type in skill set, I think that's where he fits.
He needs the peanut butter sandwich, as the league calls it. He definitely needs that 15 pounds of muscle added to his body to be a tight end. In my mind.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for us to pay a couple of bills. So we'll be back right after this, and we'll dig into the cornerback position as we try to wrap it up before the second hour, before we hit a third hour, put it that way. We'll be right back here on TMBS Draft Central. We'll be right back.
Streetwear is not dead. The next wave of black fashion comes out of the Bronx, New York. Rich Kid Clothing, picking up where FUBU, Rocawear, and Kyle Kanai left off. Rich Kid is for the next generation of Get Fly fashion heads. Use promo code MELLOW23 for 15% off your next order. And for orders over $100, there is free shipping. Again, use promo code MELLOW23 for 15% off your next order.
Draft Central is looking for an official sponsor. As the official sponsor of Draft Central, you get product placement in every episode, commercial advertising, and your logo on all Draft Central merch. Contact us at info@TeamMBS Media for more information.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build the cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gold Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. Hashtag built for the wild.
That's right. We are 50 days away from the start of the NFL draft. All right. So, in case you saw, okay, we are here all 3 days of the NFL draft, as always. I think we had our highest viewership last year, over 3,000 live views.
Yes.
Lord knows how many with the replay, but over 3,000 live views, for the 3 days of the draft. So,
And we were still talking about the players in 6 and 7 that people.
Yes.
That we weren't doing a Blue Man Crew thing like the other networks did. Yeah,
no.
we don't do that.
You want entertainment, you can keep the networks on, but if you want to know what's going on with your draft boards, folks, make sure you got us in on as well. And we're going to keep talking about players because that's what it's all about. It's not about us sitting here in a nice suit. Although it looks good night 1 and night 2 in the suits, we're dressed down day 3, and it's nothing but talking about who's still out there, who's going to fit for teams, what players can actually still help your teams on day 3. Yeah. Not so much waiting for them to get picked and giving you a little bit of blah, 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 blah. Okay, no, we're going to give you full analysis. And we only bring on people who are knowledgeable. So we're here all 3 days. They are looking for an official sponsor for the draft coverage. So if you're interested in that, if you're any company, corporations watching, team at MBS, Team MBS Media, make sure you.com, make sure you send in, reach out to those people there. Now, guys, it's time to talk corners. I'm sorry, I think I gave that the wrong end. Let me make sure I got the email correct. info@teammbsmedia.com.
There we go.
Yeah.
But to make sure I'm giving out accurate information here. All right. So time to talk corners. And like I said, I think, certain players being in the mix at corner, just like with receiver, I think grades are not going to determine what our top 5s look like. We're going to go by what we think our top 5 players are at the position, not going by draft grade. So athleticism can jump a guy's grade up pretty high when it comes to draft grade.
Well, so once again, people like to say things like underwear Olympics, blah, blah, blah. There are things where long speed matters. I'm just going to simple out say it. If you're going to be a man corner in the NFL, you can't run 4.6, right? I mean, I'm sorry. It's if it's going to be a man heavy scheme, either they've got to change your position or you got to change your scheme. If you mentioned Tease Tabor and Mr. 4.63 himself.
4.7.
That's right.
You're being generous.
That's right. Wasn't he 4.76?
The first one, yeah, he got it down to 4.72.
4.72 on the second one, yeah.
Yeah. So there's guidelines and there's good Lord. Yeah, I think
sounds like one of my creative players on the old man.
Pro day where supposedly he got it down to the 4.6s though, right?
He was still in the 4.7s.
Oh, that's right. He was still 4.7 on his pro day, 4.71. He was timed at. That's his pro day. He was timed at 4.71 still. Yep.
Jeez. Wow. Okay. So
I wish he got under 4.6. I probably would have felt a little better about him.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a big Tease Tabor guy, but even I didn't see that coming. So that says you can't play corner at all, really. But like if that kind of time, but there have been guys who survived. I mean, Everson Walls was the guy that ran it in the like mid to high 4.6s, but he wasn't playing man corner, right? There have been some really good. I mean, the most famous recent example, right, would be Richard Sherman, who ran 4.56, which is not slow for a guy his size, but he played in a very zone heavy scheme.
Yeah.
For guys who are going to play in a man heavy scheme, you're going to be manned up 4.51 or faster is what they're really looking for, right? You would be you could survive in the low 4.5s as a man heavy corner, but they want you preferably in the 4.4s. While that matters a lot less if you're in a zone heavy scheme. So I've begun to warm up to the move around guys, right? The guys who I've seen play multiple positions because, once again, we just watched the Super Bowl where the ability to have that did not have people come off the field when personnel changes, right? So if you have at least one of your safeties who can come down and, somebody goes 4 wide when you don't see that coming, can just walk down and take away the other slot, that's hugely important, right?
Yep.
If you have a half field safety, you can also play, middle field safety. The box safety, they aren't extinct, but they're on the endangered list, right? The true box safety is, they're not gone, but it's, John Lynch isn't walking through that door anytime soon. Steve Atwater's not coming through that door anytime soon. David Fulcher is a will linebacker now.
Joey
So So that ability, we just saw what Cooper DeJean did, right? That ability to be an elite level nickel. I mean, I don't know. We're not doing nickel, I guess, as a separate position. But one of the guys that I put in my top 5 is the guy that's probably going to be a elite level nickel. And that's as important nowadays as being an elite level outside corner, because more and more teams are putting their best receiver in the slot. Mike Evans played almost 50% of his snaps the past season in the slot.
Well,
so, yep.
I thought you were done.
Yeah, I am done.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, we're good.
Well, Bill wasn't here last week, so we let him start off the last one. I brought up the rear, so we're just going to flip it around.
Flip it around, yep.
Greg, you're sliding up to the 1, I'm backing you up, and then Bill gets to bring up to clean it all up. So,
all
Greg,
right.
here's your top 5 corners.
Okay. There's Travis. Okay. All you people, I don't hate Travis Hunter, blah, 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 that I've heard all year long because I had Ashton Genty winning the Heisman Trophy. I don't hate Travis Hunter. My next corner is Jody Barron from Texas. And then I have Siobhan Ravel Jr., who is the number 1 nickel corner. Bottom line, if you didn't see him play this year because of his injury, go back to 2023. You will see that this guy is going to be the best nickel cornerback in the league as a rookie. That's just my feeling. Will Johnson had injuries at that school up north, at the place that I don't like, but again, he was my number 1 corner before the season even started. His injuries knocked him down a little bit, and then I got Trey Amos from
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Who I just love his play. He's fantastic. So those are my 5 corners.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I like it. For me, Will Johnson hasn't moved for me. He's still my top corner. Yes, he had injuries this year. I think he'll be fine. It hasn't been the thing that's been constantly dogging him. However,
there's Benjamin Morris. I didn't want the Notre Dame guys would get him up there.
Well, I like Ben Morrison before this year. I thought the injury was going to bring him back to Notre Dame. When he came out, I was like, interesting. But I think Ben Morrison, and I'll tell you when I get to. I don't want to cheat the other guys. I don't really making me cheat the guys, Bill. So Travis, like I said, jack of all trades, master of none, right? So we know the super athlete that he is. It's just the fact of the matter is, yes, he played a lot more DB than receiver. I've seen him get worked by certain receivers, and it was just like, this isn't the premier corner I was expecting to see. I think he's going to be a damn good corner. I don't think he'll be all-pro at corner. I think he has the potential to be all-pro at receiver. So that's why I have a higher grade for him at receiver than I do as a corner. Okay. Jahdae Barron continued to ascend for me all season long.
Yep.
And that's why he's my 3. I like Rebel. He wasn't going to go past 4 because I see him as a nickel as well. I don't see him being spectacular on the outside. I think you allow him to be a lot freer on the inside. And I think that's where he's going to excel. Ben Morrison, I think, is a guy that could play both. And that's why he made my top 5. I think there are very few guys I think can play in the slot and outside and be good at it. Yep. One of those guys is the guy that's over killing it in Seattle in the slot, but you could put him outside in Witherspoon. Right? I loved Witherspoon when he was in the draft. I think Ben Morrison, had he not gotten hurt this year, would have had a tremendous year, and we'd possibly be talking him a little higher on this list. I think the injury robbed him of that. But overall, when healthy, you're talking about a guy that could play outside, could play inside, and make a difference. It's Ben Morrison. So that's why he made my top 5. Bill.
Yeah. And the only real question about Morrison is time, speed, which you obviously didn't get answered because he's not able to work out yet.
Mm-hmm.
So whether he's a man or a zone guy will be at least in part decided by that. Yes. And then that may also, come into play to some extent about whether he ends up on the outside or ends up in the slot. Those are all players Trey Amos was my number 6, and I think Morrison was my number 7. So they just missed for me.
Yeah.
But obviously, Jedi Barron is my number 1 for 2 reasons. One is, I mean, his IQ, both as a player and as a person, is incredible. Such a smart human being and a really smart football player. He also gives you a little bit of position flexibility. He's a guy who can also play a little bit. He can play. I know it sounds strange because some people think, well, corner is corner, but some guys can only play on one side of the field.
Yes.
We've seen guys who their hips for a reason only open one way, right? They can't really turn the other way. And it sounds funny when you say it, but we've seen it. We've seen guys who can only play on the left side or the right side, or at least play at a high level on the left.
Yeah.
But I've seen him play on both sides and even a little bit in the slots. So the fact that he can play on either boundary or field corner and play in the slot a little bit, and he's got ball production. He's got toughness. He's not an elite tackler, but a good enough tackler. And, Travis Hunter, for all the reasons we talked about, freak athlete, can do whatever. If he were to concentrate on playing corner, I think he could be an all-pro corner. But we don't know, right? He's never decided to just practice solely one position and play solely one position. So we don't know what he could be, how much more growth he might make. But I feel like if he were to concentrate on it, and it's such a high-value position, you can find really good wide receivers, not only throughout the draft, but even in undrafted free agency. Top flight man cover corners, you are not going to find all the way throughout the draft and into the undrafted free agent signing period. And that's one reason why I think, while there are some teams that definitely have him on the board as a wide receiver, I think most teams say it's easier to find a receiver. We're going to stick this kid at corner. Will Johnson, for all the stuff people talked about, size, he knows how to use that length and strength to just take people, out, sometimes even off the field altogether, but definitely away from where they want to be. Your classic sort of press man, Siobhan Rebel Jr. Once again, I know people don't watch a lot of East Carolina football, but please do. First of all, if you get a chance to go in person, Dowdy Ficklin is one of the more underrated stadium experiences in all of college football. Get rowdy and dowdy. Highly recommended. If you haven't had a chance to do it yet, do it. It's a cool stadium, and unlike some stadiums, it's not a nightmare to get in and out of it. The area around it's just a cool little spot part of North Carolina. Highly recommended. But getting back to the player, a guy with really good route recognition skills, can click and close. Once again, not a blow you up tackler, but a solid get the job done tackler. In fact, none of these guys are blow you up tacklers. They're all somewhere between average to good tacklers, and that's where we are now for the most part at the position. There's some guys lower down or off the top, 5 or 6 that are, or even top 7 who are better tacklers, but don't have quite the same athletic ability. But and of course, Maxwell Hairston. Now, I think we all knew he's going to run crazy. I mean, we all knew that Mad Max, has that crazy. He obviously ran extremely well. He's got size. He's got a couple of really good names on tape. He's played against a bunch of guys who are in the league now. Throw on the last couple of times he played LSU. It's a mixed bag. He doesn't win every rep. I'm not going to lie to you. But look who he's playing against. He's playing against LSU. Look who he's playing against. He plays against Alabama. So he's played against, some high-level NFL-type wide receivers in his career and held his own for the most part. Yeah, he's had a couple times he got flat out abused. He needs to be a little less grabby at times, which you could say about most college corners, but he can be a little grabby at times. He can trust himself not enough at the catch point. He can definitely panic a little at times, not as patient as he maybe could be or should be in parts of his back pedal. But you can't teach 4.29, or whatever. You can't, he's got something you can't teach. And he's got good size to go with it, right? He's not a little guy. He's a decent-sized corner with that kind of speed. That's the kind of guy that NFL teams will have even higher than I have him, right? They'll have him even higher than that because of that combination, especially certain teams who really believe in height, weight, speed. Talking at you, looking at you, Colts. But if you're really into that, we'll have him even higher.
All right. So let's talk about the other guys at the position because there's a lot of them out there, right?
Yep.
I'll start off with Zy Alexander, LSU.
Yep.
Combine wise, an interesting workout. I thought he could have run faster. He didn't. When you look at his film, he's a guy that can stay in phase, but when he gets out of phase, it gets ugly. You know what I'm saying? He's that guy that when he's locked in step for step with a guy, he looks like, okay, this is a top-notch corner. But the recovery, I don't know if it's a speed issue or if it's a technique issue.
Yeah. Right.
So he has his issues there. But overall, he's a solid corner. A guy that I liked when I watched him here in Florida, and I found some of the reports on him interesting when I read them. BJ Adams out of UCF.
Mm-hmm.
I know the one everybody talked about was Matt McWilliams.
Yeah.
His
More of a
backfield
slot guy, but yeah.
Yeah, but and I watched Adams, bigger corner. I think his biggest issue is changing direction. He's a guy that, you're going to probably put on the outside mostly. I think scheme hurt him. I watched him. They played a lot of bend but don't break on the outside, so it hit him a lot from a lot of things. I found it funny. One of the reports said it's a false front. His run tackling. He doesn't make as much effort as it seems. I watched him hit when I was at UCF games, so I don't know where that assessment came from. So there's certain things in his scouting reports I've seen out there, but I think he's a bigger corner that's solid. He's not special, he's a solid player.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that you see in those mid rounds somewhere, go somewhere, and he may actually turn out to be a solid addition to somebody's secondary. He gives me comparable vibes to Anthony Henry, a guy who started for several NFL teams, was a solid player, wasn't a great starter, just a solid one. So who else for you guys do you have out there?
Well, I've talked before about the fact there was only one HBCU prospect there, which I'm not going to belabor the point, but it bothers me. Bothered me then and bothers me still. But I'm going to start with a guy who, if there's another HBCU player, at least has a chance to be drafted, it's Kendall Bowler from Florida A&M.
Yeah.
And he had a really strong showing at the Legacy Bowl / HBCU Combine. He can mirror and match. He can, turn and burn. He can tackle better than some of the guys we've talked about. Good enough. Once again, good enough tackler, certainly. And has good ball skills, right? He doesn't have the hands like feet. He can go up and catch it. Maybe not elite level athletic ability, but above average in all regards. He's a guy that I would have loved to have seen at the Combine, as I said, the big Combine. Yeah. But he's a guy that I believe will, if he isn't drafted, he'll be a priority undrafted free agent. He'll play in the league. And then a guy that has off the charts production, sort of like the cornerback version of Nick Nash. Like Nick Nash produced like crazy, but nobody likes him as a receiver. Sort of the reverse of that is Noel Williams from Cal. First of all, Cal is low key becoming like the Pacific Coast DBU. They've got a bunch of guys in the league, and they're about to put like 2 or 3 more. I think 3 Cal DBs were at the Combine.
Yeah.
So they're doing something there. But Noel Williams is the one that is of the ones that are going to probably play corner. He's the one that has the greatest sense of getting to the football. He finds the football and gets his hands on the football at a super high level. I think he led the entire nation at the FBS level in passes broken up. He is a guy that has some length, tested above average, for a longer. He's a guy that's probably better as a zone corner though, but he can probably play a little bit of man too. Cover 3, that sort of, once again, I'm not calling him Richard Sherman, but he can do Richard Sherman things. has some length, has some strength, finds the football. Some defensive backs, some corners, it's okay to sort of play the man to a certain extent, but they never locate the football, right? They find the football when the guy is grabbing it. Not Noah Williams. He does, it's the look and lean thing. He'll, figure out where the ball is and make a play on the ball almost every time. He makes some sort of play on the football, doesn't let it, beat him to the point. So I think some team's going to get him day 3 and be very pleased with what they get. Who are some of your guys?
What about you, Craig?
Oh, okay. The young cornerback from Florida State.
Oh, Azariah.
Azariah Thomas. Yes.
Azariah Thomas. Yep. Again, yes, Florida State had a brutal record, but don't count that against these players. Stop doing that nonsense. You want to talk about a guy who can tackle people?
Yeah, he can tackle. Yeah.
He could tackle people. He had 52 tackles this season.
Yep.
So he's got to get some better buzz out there.
Yeah,
because if you're talking about a press corner, he's a guy that he's a guy that can definitely be a press corner for you.
Yep.
On some boards, he's top 50.
Yeah.
Yep. My only issue with him is that super clunky back pedal. I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know if you broke it down, Jeff, but
it's a long-legged thing.
Yeah.
It's a long leg. He's got long legs. That's some of those tall corners. It's a hip thing, which is why they don't turn very well.
That's right.
The back pedal looks awkward because he's a longer corner. Us small guys, we don't have to move the whole legs the back pedal. We just dig and you see the feet going, right? With him, you see the whole leg. He's a very long-legged individual. So
right.
that happens with tall corners, with taller players. You get that. Some of them, you're too high. No, he's just a long guy, so he looks upright, and he's not. His hips, he's bending them. He's bending the hips. He's bending the knees. He's bending the ankles. He's got the three levels of flexion, but he's just such a long guy. He's still so high. Well, with him, the back pedal is a little different. It's just he's got really long legs, so they have to recoil longer than the shorter guys.
Exactly. And Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State is another guy that I absolutely love. Just fantastic.
Yeah. You could tell I was a DB coach.
Parrish, if we did separate nickel rankings, that's my number one nickel. That's mine. And I like Ravel, but Parrish, if I'm doing separate nickel rankings, is my number one nickel. I just think he's going to be, that's the guy that comes out of the box and is a, Pro Bowl level nickel, I think. And once again, tackler, right? A guy who can definitely tackle and has some explosiveness. Even though he's not the biggest cat in the world, he's competitive and gets involved in plays on the ball, even against taller receivers. Yeah, I'm a big Parrish fan.
Yeah, because he's 5'10", what 192, I think.
Yep.
So again, he's not as big as Mr. Thomas is and all that other jazz, but he really impressed me. Kobe Bryant.
I knew that you were going to say him. That's why I left him for you.
Yeah. Well, and again, he went to Kansas, not Kansas State. But he's another corner that I really, really like.
As a teammate in the draft.
Yeah.
Mello Dotson.
Mello Dotson, who could end up being my favorite other guy this year. He could be.
I love it when teammates are in the draft together, right? Especially at the same position. That's always fun. You get a pair of corners, a pair of receivers. Yeah. Bad one is a pair of quarterbacks.
Yeah. No.
So Bilal Coney.
There we go. Speaking of press man corners, there we go.
Press man corner, yeah.
Question will be the teams that ask him to do the combo coverages. You got to run zone. And is he good in space? I think that's one of the questions you look at with some of the man corners is, okay, now we got to ask you to think and read. Can we trust your eye discipline? You know, because there's always something people, you know, when you have good athletes at the corner position, there are defensive coordinators that like to get lazy and say, you know what, why teach these guys? Let them be athletes and let them go run with somebody. Let them go out there and line up on somebody and run with them. Yeah, but sometimes you know that becomes a downfall because if you're in man, so there's a weak link out there somewhere that they're going to find. You got to play zone at some point. If they don't have the eye discipline and the technique to understand what the route combinations that are coming at them, you get picked apart. Right. So is he one of those guys that is going to be fine in zone, or is he one of those guys that's going to be? It takes a while for him to fully grasp how to cover area versus all the different combinations that he's going to see, where the threats are coming from. Some guys have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I got to speak to him a little bit about that actually, and he mentioned that it's one of the things he's been working on is expanding his understanding of if he's ever going to be asked to pattern match, and you know, improving on that, working on the mental side of the game because physically, I mean. He's essentially you're looking at Antrell Roll, right? A guy who has a strong enough frame that if you ask him to play safety, he could do it, right? He's another tackler. Right? He's a guy who strike you, right? In fact, he might be the hardest tackler of all the guys we've mentioned so far. Mm-hmm. He's got some hits on tape. On what's the thing that there's a big back from? Is it Akron? I'm thinking of. He transferred out. Penny something. Harwell. Not Hard. I was not Penny, but he has I think his name starts with an H. He's a big back, like 240 pounds or something, close to it. And there's a goal line or no close to the goal line, like high red zone play. They throw a little angle route to him, and he comes up and drills this kid. And the kid's like got to be well over 230 pounds. He just drops him. So yeah, he can strike you. And he's growing on the mental side, but he talked about that. He talked about that when I asked him about, things we just seen in the Super Bowl and Fangio's defense and, how you're taking man principles essentially and overlaying them over playing, quarters coverage in zone or playing, cover 6, cover 9, or all these, things that Fangio loves to do, but with really aggressive, like I said, basically like man principles. And he talked about what he's done and what he's working on. I think that if you are patient with him, he could start in whatever system.
Well,
I'm going to give the smaller cornerback some ups here. Upton Stout, 5'8".
Yes.
Well, he's a nickel, obviously, but I love him too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But again, this young man played at Western Kentucky, and he is going to be he's going to be just fine in the NFL. I
think he'll be good. I think he'll have his limitations with certain slot receivers that may give him issues. Every once in a while, you run across those slot receivers. Most of the ones that we see are shifty, short area quickness guys, right?
Yeah.
So those guys are hard cover, but they're hard cover in the intermediate and short areas.
Yeah.
The guys like the Worthies that can move into the slot and then hit you with something vertical may give him more problems. Because if you watch the Senior Bowl, his problems came on the deeper routes. Yep. So I think there's a top end speed question with him. What does his speed max out at? So you have guys that can actually run that high top end speed, may give him issues. But that's once again, they got to get vertical first, right?
So that's right.
Yeah, I think when you talk about it, slot corner, what's the biggest threat for a slot corner? When you talk about a vertical route, that deep arrow route, that over route that comes underneath the safety, over the linebacker, that goes all the way across the field, that makes you cover 40 yards all the way across the field, right? That's stuff that's going to give him a hard time. Not so much. I think he's fine underneath. I think you try to run a whip or a shallow on him and with the mesh concepts,
he's going to be right there.
Quick outs. I think he's going to be there with that stuff. You want to hit him with the bench routes on 3rd and long. I think he'll be there with that stuff. But when you're talking about those long routes where he's got to cover a lot of ground, I think if he falls out of phase, that's where he's going to struggle.
Exactly.
You got to be able to buy time for all of that.
Yeah. Well, Adarius Washington finally got used this year by the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
Like a 5'8" guy. And if he wasn't in there because they finally moved Kyle Hamilton to his natural position,
Yes.
that's when the Ravens defense came all of a sudden. Oh my Lord, this is not going to be fun. And it was Adarius Washington who was the key to that, who's 5'8", 190 pounds. That's it.
And this is where we're seeing the short corners fit in, right? We're seeing if you're short and athletic, that's where you're going into the slot. We can now you don't have to match up on the outside versus that 6-foot receiver. We're going to throw back shoulder and fade over you all day long. Now we put you inside. You're probably going to get some short guy who's shifty, or you may get a bigger guy, but you probably just as athletic as he is, so you can stay in phase with him.
Right.
So I think that's where we're starting to see those guys fit in more. You can hide them from the fade ball in the slot a lot easier than you can on the outside, right?
Yeah.
And it allows them to play to their quickness. They can cover the two-way go better than the bigger corner who has a hard time swapping in directions and opening the hips and do all of those things. So I think that's why they're doing that. It's more about the skill set and how it fits. He's a heck of a corner. I think I think the one downfall he has is what works best for him moving inside in the slot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What about the other UCF corner, McWilliams? Jeff?
Williams, yeah.
McWilliams, I think he's highly aggressive, which is what I think works to his advantage, right?
Yeah.
So I think moving him inside is what's best because that's a big miss. So moving him inside is best. He has the short area quickness and the ability to change direction. So I think, but he's not exactly the greatest leaper, right? So if you watch it on film, not exactly the greatest leaper. So I think that's where you hide him inside, let him cover guys who he matches up well with. You use that athleticism. I think he's fine inside. On the outside, I think you risk putting him in certain situations where it doesn't fit what he does best.
And then what about Jabbar Muhammad from Oregon, Bill?
Yeah, so that's another guy. He once again, he gets a second bite at the apple his pro day. He did not test super well, but he's a good football player, and he's going to help you right away on special teams. Another guy that is not afraid to tackle, so that helps him. But he's going to need, if he wants to play corner, he needs to show people that he's going to have athlete to do it. But he's got the other things you look for. Once again, he does see it pretty quickly. He trusts his eyes. He gets downhill. He'll put a hit on you. May not blow you up, but he'll get you down. And not incredibly great ball skills, but fine. He can get his hands on the football at times. He's to me squarely in day 3. But if he does maybe retest, I don't think he gets out of day 3, unless something truly unforeseen happens. But I think he could push his way up the board a little bit. There's a place for him in the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last one before we go, and it's got to fit your all-name team, Bill. Elijah Huzzie.
Yeah.
UNC.
Yeah, it is a fun name, and he's a fun player. He is a fun player. You mentioned, some of the reps he's had has been against some pretty darn good guys. He's gone against, Restrepo. He's gone against some of the guys that, at Clemson who were pretty darn good. He's gone against Ja'Cory. What's the Louisville kid's last name? Ja'Cory something. Whatever Ja'Cory's last name is. Harris? Is it? But he gave as good as he got for the most part, even against some of those top receivers he's faced. And he usually has taken the other team's best receiver.
Ja'Cory Brooks.
Brooks, thank you.
Yes.
He had some good reps against Ja'Cory Brooks. He lost some, but he mostly, he came out pretty well for the most part. He's played against some good, NFL type receivers in his time, and practiced also in his time with guys who were NFL type receivers. And you figure that out, at the practice level, then you don't have to make those mistakes in the game. But yeah, he's definitely an NFL type, and probably better suited to, well, first of all, a defense where you get a lot of pass rush, right, where the ball comes out quickly. He's another guy that the longer the play, I mean, that's true of any DB, but the longer the play goes along, the more things that happen on that second, third, whatever reaction, the more likely he is to get lost. He's not an elite level find the football guy, but he's a solid find the football guy.
And if you want a big tall corner, 6'4" out of the University of Washington, Jeff, you won't like his first name, but Ephesians Prysock. He's a big boy at 6'4", 190. Yeah, he's the big corner.
Yep.
I didn't see what he ran. Did you see what he ran?
I didn't see what he ran.
That was for you were asking for which player?
Prysock.
Okay. I can find that. I've got a spreadsheet I'm working on. Let's see.
Trying to see.
I'm not too sure that I actually saw him run the 40. So
Actually, I don't think he was there.
well, yeah, that's the other thing. I think he could just be a pro day guy, right?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one of my guys I almost forgot about. Caleb Ransaw from Tulane. I'm a huge Ransaw guy, and he had a fantastic combine. He was in the top 3 or so in almost every testing category. And you go back to the tape, it's like, oh, well, that's pretty good. But yeah, obviously, the corners who tested well, and a lot of them did. Hairston obviously led the way, breaking, the only one who was under 4.3. And then you had Darian Porter, who's a big corner, right? 6'2" and 3/4, and a guy that played at about 207, though he's slim, he dropped some weight to run. But he ran 4.3. Ransaw ran 4.33. Parrish ran 4.35. It was a fantastic time for him. Frazier ran 4.36. Barron ran 4.39. Longerbeam, another guy that ran way faster than I expected, 4.39. Justin Wally from Minnesota, legit 4.4, 4.41 from Mac Williams. And despite being a big, strong guy, Bilal Coney ran a 4.43. Amos ran a 4.43. It was a fantastic time for him. Another longer corner than Upton Stout came in at 4.44, which is a great time for him.
Yeah.
And once again, especially for a corner who's, best, like speed isn't his best quality. So when a guy's best quality isn't speed, but he runs fast, it always gives you hope.
The Huskies had their pro day today, as a matter of fact, and Prysock was not there. I think he may come back for his senior year, which is a good decision by him.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking as well. That he may have.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you know what makes sense? That we start to get ready for next week's show. Why? The first mocks of the season come out next week for this show. So next week we are going to be kicking off the show with our first mocks of the season, and then we'll dig into our second to last position group of the season. Bill's old position, the safeties.
Safety.
So it's a good group.
Indeed. Highly underrated.
Yep.
This will be the one category I have a member of Notre Dame in, okay? I didn't put Morrison up. I didn't put Kaiser up. I didn't put any of those guys up there because I left it to Jeff, because I get accused of being nothing but fighting Irish all the time. So guess what? This time,
Well,
I
but that's
found-
on the last word. I don't give that to you on this, but on the last word, yeah, they give it to you. We give you a little schneid about that. That's true.
well, I've carried it over. I've carried it over to this. So there you go.
So there you go. But yes, so next week, mock drafts and safeties.
Yep.
But for this week, it's time to say goodbye. We have taken up 2 hours of your time, and we're going to give you the rest of your night back, folks. All right. But we will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 9:15 Eastern, 8:15 Central. And Greg?
7:15 Mountain, 6:15 Pacific, and 3:15 in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Well, Brock is still alive, so
Brock's busy in Sports Illustrated world.
Yeah.
You gotta let
But
him live. You know what I'm saying?
still, I still give the man credit for being Hawaii.
Well, we're going to give him credit as we walk out the door. Thanks for watching, everybody. We hope to see you next week here on Draft Central. Thanks for watching.
See you next week.